I am at the biggest tournament in the world right now in Reykjavik, Iceland. Today was round one and I was paired against the strongest U14 woman chess player in the world, boasting a rating of 2392 from China. And I have the white pieces. I play e4, my opponent goes c5, and this is a 14-year-old girl right here. I go knight f3, a6, and now I'm surprised immediately out of the opening. This is called the Achilles Sicilian, and to be honest, it is a very, very flexible move order that I discovered this game. Really incredible. Here, I just blast open the center with d4, but this is already a mistake. I was completely out of book on move 2. Completely surprised. Here, it's better to go knight c3 and keep the position closed, something that I learned later on. So d4, c takes d4, and I take with my knight. By the way, this is my first time reviewing this game, so you really have the raw me just telling you my thoughts right after the game. The game just happened. Knight takes d4. My opponent goes knight f6, and immediately I'm uncomfortable. I don't know what to play. Here I have two options to defend the pawn. Either bishop d3, developing a bishop and defending here, very common in Taimanov Sicilians, or I can play knight c3, very common in Najdorf's. But because of my opponent's flexible opening move choice, if I play either one of them, I find myself busted in the first few moves. If I play bishop d3 to defend, my opponent does not go into a Taimanov, which would favor me, with e6, but actually would go into a Najdorf with d6 and then e5, and my bishop here is looking just terrible, pinned up against my own pawn structure. So I didn't want to go with bishop d3. So what's the other choice? Okay, knight c3 is what I chose, but also knight c3, I was uncomfortable playing it. Why? Because now you can switch it up to a Taimanov with e6 and have a favorable Taimanov with bishop b4 coming in. I was just so puzzled, like what to do here. So I actually figure out that after e6, it's not all that bad. We're early on in the opening and I can play e5 here. And this knight suddenly doesn't have any squares. You don't have the keen tactic queen a5 check picking up the pawn because my knight is developed. And if the knight goes back to g8, I'm completely better. And if knight d5, I can just double these pawns here, and I'm also better in this position. So my opponent touches the e-pawn, and I'm expecting e6. I'm like, this is completely bad, but then plays e5, and I'm like, oh my god, I didn't even look at e5. And now a move that's aggressive like knight f5 is way too early and gets punished by d5, and this completely busts open the black position, and I'm already in trouble. So here I have to decide between knight b3 and knight f3. Oh boy, oh boy. Knight b3, I am choosing a Najdorf type of system with white, but then black goes bishop b4, which is not usually played in a Najdorf because there's usually d6 involved and the bishop is behind the pawn structure. So I'm just giving a free bishop move, pinning my knight, it's a disaster. So on e5, I go knight f3. And it's a decision. I mean, I'm attacking this pawn. I believe that this is some tempo, but my opponent just completely negates it and goes bishop b4. And now if I take the pawn, I can get into some serious trouble after queen c7 or queen e7 I saw, and I have to be careful. So because I've convinced myself that taking here is not good, because it doesn't look good, it's anti-positional, right? I'm moving a piece a second time in the opening. Now I have to decide how to develop my pieces. So I look at bishop g5. I really didn't like bishop g5, by the way. So black can double and then play h6. And after this, I just don't love the position. Or you can just play h6. And if I go back, g5. And here, if I go back now, I lose a pawn. So on h6, I have to give up my bishop pair. And then queen takes. And I don't like this position, my knight is still pinned. So I didn't love bishop g5 at all. Bishop d3 is still, my bishop is doing nothing, it's hindering my own pawn structure. But I do agree that I have to move this bishop. If I develop this bishop, I can castle quick on the short side and be okay. However, if I go bishop d2 here, which I also liked, the engine doesn't like it, I love that because I didn't play it. But on bishop d2, I thought that takes, and now if you take, I can take on e5, and here white is actually better, and the engine agrees, which I'm very pleased to hear. But bishop d2 is such a passive move. The bishop here is extremely passive. I knew that this was just not a good move. So I opt for something very, very adventurous. Bishop c4. Like, I'm telling you, legit, I have 56 minutes left. I've used a third of my time in the first 7 moves of this game because it's so puzzling to me how I continue. And I looked at 5 different moves to develop my pieces on move 6. Like, this never happens. Bishop c4. The idea is that I control the d5 square with 3 pieces. Okay, this is a fake piece because it's pinned, but I'm really preventing a d5 so that I can have some form of advantage moving into the middle game. Now, bishop c4, and you might realize that the bishop is loose and the knight is also pinned and the knight is loose behind it. So a natural move like queen c7 is very, very typical. Here I calculated 2 moves, b5. Yeah, I think after bishop here, knight takes, and then queen takes, I think I was okay, because after knight c6, I can consider taking or just castle with a better position. So queen c7 was definitely the better move, and I was waiting for it, I was anticipating it with queen d3. You see, if I do anything else, it's not looking that good. Bishop b3, and I think I just give up a pawn here. So really, like, I had to see queen d3 and I played it, and it's the only move, confirmed by the engine. I'm seeing this as you are seeing this, right? Queen d3, and now there's b5 coming in, of course, tempoing the bishop and opening up the diagonal for this bishop. Very thematic for Sicilians, especially Khan and Taimanov Sicilians. And here, if I go bishop b3, I saw that after bishop b7, it's hard to defend this pawn, and I don't want to go down this route. So I go bishop d5. This is calculated way beforehand, and after knight takes, pawn takes, pretty forced. If I go queen takes, I don't know. I think bishop b7 is quite good. Oh no, this gives the pawn. Just knight c6 is quite good for black, and my queen is looking quite out of place, right? So here I take with the pawn. This has some benefits. This knight is completely clueless and cannot develop. But one could say the same about my bishop that is just completely clueless on c1. And here, I already knew that black is a little bit better because positionally I'm kind of busted. Before I played this move, I had to realize 2 things, that black's tactics didn't work. So I looked at this really cool d5 move that looks kind of winning for black. And after bishop takes d5, the idea is that you take with the knight. Not e takes d5, because that runs into a little forky fork and I'm losing. So bishop takes, knight takes, e takes, and here there's a difference. e4 doesn't work because if I take, you would have bishop takes here, but I take with check. So that's the premise of queen d3, how that doesn't work. Second tactic that doesn't work. After b5, bishop here, knight takes, e takes, e4 now, the same idea. There's queen takes e4 with check, and I'm completely winning. It's over. So this tactic, deflecting my queen off of the c3 knight, does not work because I can take with check, and even like I'm forking things. I think even this is completely winning. The bishop's forced back, and then I have this extremely cute tactic. So going into this line, I knew that things were working out for me tactically, but positionally I'm busted. So my opponent goes castles, threatening e4, right? So now when I take back, there's no check, obviously. And so after castles by the black pieces, I am freaking out because f5 e4 is coming at a rapid pace and I don't know how to meet it. It's a big conundrum. Let's say I castle here. My opponent can go f5, threatening this, and the engine finds d6, which is insane. d6, queen takes, queen d5 check, sacking a pawn, and the engine gives equality here. How you find equality down a full pawn, I don't know, but engine does engine things. It says a4 here. It's just like, I don't know, right? It's not human to find this. Here you have to prevent the fork as a human. So, okay, if you go queen e3, I really like d6 for what the engine says here, but I calculated e4, knight here, and there's some f4, f3 things that looks extremely dangerous. Can I even hold the defense of this knight? I don't even know. So I was totally uncomfortable by this. I think understandably. Comment what you would have done better as me in this game. I really want to know in the comment section. As white, where would you have gone differently? Because if you don't know the theory here, which I didn't, it gets really slippery really early on. So I calculate here for 40 minutes, like 30 minutes. Literally almost all my time gone. So I calculate first bishop d2, and I really like this move. After f5 threatening d4, I saw a3. And now after e4, I can play queen d4. So forking my two pieces, I can play queen d4 attacking your bishop. And if you try to trade off your bishop first, I can go bishop takes c3 and then threatening checkmate, and this threat is no more. And if you go takes, I can go into this crazy line with takes, rook g1, and after check, bishop e3, your pieces are completely useless. I'm gonna take this pawn and I'm gonna have a raging attack on the king side. I'm gonna castle long, I'm gonna bring my rook here. Like, this is ideal. I really, really liked this line. There's a small problem though. Here after queen d4, black can just play bishop c5, double attacking my pieces, and I'm down a piece. After queen e5 trying to save, I did see this in the game. Queen takes, and my knight is completely trapped in the center. Like, completely trapped. So none of this worked. The second move I calculate is a4. And here after takes, it's quite ambitious. I have rook takes and I'm attacking this bishop. It's really, really nice for the white pieces. I calculate like 3 other moves here, like knight e1, knight d2, castles, f5, knight e1. I hated all of this. It's so passive. It's so un-me. Bishop d2, as I said before. I looked at knight g5. I looked at ambitious things. And really, I couldn't find anything. What the engine says here, which I find very interesting, is that castles and f5, d6 we saw before, but a4 now is equalizing, giving a fork on e4. How? Here I have to find d6, attacking the queen. On queen takes, I have compensation for the pawn after the queen trade and rook d1. How? Bishop back, knight d2, and I have compensation for the pawn somehow. I don't know. I really don't. I really don't know. I can't see that. So a4 for some reason. And if takes with the bishop, well, this actually blunders because I have queen d5 check, picking up a rook. Again, finding d6 is just so anti-position. It's just so counterintuitive, right? So after 30 minutes of thought in this position, I finally go on a3. And I see here that the endgame is quite okay for white. Okay, I'm gonna be down a pawn maybe because bishop e7 and it's hard to defend this pawn. I'll castle to keep attacking this pawn here so that if you take, I can take, and my castling move actually defended g2. But here I saw that, okay, after e4, knight d4, bishop takes, it's less than hanging. It's not that good. Lo and behold, I was calculating too far, and after a3, I blundered the exact tactic that my opponent was threatening after castles. I completely forgot that black still has e4 here. My opponent plays it after a minute's thought, and after 11 moves, I resign against the strongest U14 woman in the world, almost 2,400. I actually saw her play at Sevilla. She was at the same tournament as me, and she beat a GM in that tournament. Very impressive. So I'm not extremely sad. I would be extremely sad if this was a lower rated opponent, but this was a good learning experience, and overall, I just need to build a good repertoire against the O'Kelly. I didn't know that that was a thing, and I got punished badly today. Thank you so much for watching. On to round 2 tomorrow. I have a double round tomorrow. Round 2 early round, round 3 later round. See you for some recaps. I'm gonna try to post these recaps the day of the day that I play them. So you're gonna get some fresh Zach. And also, I'm streaming every single game live on my Twitch channel, which will be in the description. Thank you so much for supporting this journey, and see you in round 2.